sunny. Yeah.
So we are going to be online in the moment, and then I think we can start. So if you please, may I say just some words about you to the people who are surrounding me right now in this room, and also the people who are connected via Zoom. So Nuno Valentim is an architect, a really great architect from Porto, Portugal, far away from here. Nuno studied at the Faculty of Architecture in University of Porto, basically named as VAW. I mean, it's the most familiar name of the school, where he received a PhD in architecture, and also he holds a master degree in architectural rehabilitation from the Faculty of Engineering and the University of Porto. In 1994, Nuno began independent professional practice in collaboration with the architect José Gigante from 1995 to 2004. And since 2005, he's a professor at the VAW Architecture School. Among other works, and Nuno has an incredible amount of perfect examples of architecture. He's also an author of the restoration of the Gallery of Biodiversity Botanical Garden of Porto, the expansion of the French Lyceum in Porto, and the restoration of Bolhao Market, the central market of Porto. So, and exactly about this study case, I think Nuno will give us some ideas and the vision of what's going on, what have happened there, and we can start then. So please welcome Nuno Valentim.
Thank you. I hope you're listening well. Yeah, there's no...
Yes.
Yes, there's no feedback. Okay. So thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be in Russia, even if it's online. But I'm really hoping to visit you as soon as possible. So it's a pleasure to share our work and mainly our experience in the Bolhao Central Market, because of your I believe that you are right now working on your market, your own market, and your central market. So markets, I believe the theme of the markets are somehow and what to do with the markets. It's somehow a challenge. I was using the word problem, but because in some cases they are problematic, you know, mainly here in Portugal, many of them, they became void with because of the shopping malls and the supermarkets, and they weren't capable of getting side by side with the competition. But there are, of course, some exceptions. So I believe this somehow happened around Europe. Markets became most of the time bigger than the need. So we see a lot of towns and a lot of cities thinking of complementary programs in order to cope with the market itself. Well, the same happened with Bolhao. Bolhao, it's the central market of Porto, but the particularity of Bolhao is that he's having he's needing of work for a long time. He had already 4 projects that you will see and 4 visions of markets. So it's an interesting case study because of that, because of the different strategies that already were in the table, let's say. So I'll share my screen and my presentation. Can I do it, Gregory? Yeah. Yes?
Yes, just a moment. And now you can start.
Okay. I will share. I'll share both screens. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. This is it. Okay. Can you see it in full screen?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So I just make a small change in here. Okay. And now, no, we lost.
Yep, for a moment.
Yeah. And now?
Yes, it's online. It's good.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I have to close the window because there's noise outside. Sorry. So, first of all, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to translate it in English. So there are some words in Portuguese, but I will translate it during the presentation.
It's all okay. It's all fine.
So, normally I present also the market as an this is the view from the high entrance because Bolhao it's an entire block of the city in the city center, and this is the northern entrance at a high level. But I presented Bolhao as an example of this translating it from Portuguese as an example of how political decision must be informed by architectural knowledge. So the first very interesting thing about markets in general, we have an expression here in Portugal. I don't know if you have it also in Russia, but when we say, I'm going to the market, we say, I'm going to the square. And if I say, I'm going to the square, praça, if I say, eu vou à praça, I'm going to the square, everybody knows that I'm going to the market. So it's very interesting, this idea of funding and the square as a meeting point and naturally as a commerce point. So Bolhao, these are the first plans known from Porto. Here's Rio Douro River, where the high east comes the port wine, that it comes from to Porto, and there at east. Do you see my arrow? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so here's the sea, and as you can see, there's a green area here. This is a zoom, and this is where the square, the first square of the market that was built in 1830s, was built in. You can see also see here some lines of water. This is the first plan known for the market. So from 1837, and you can see the water that crosses the area, and the works that were needed to found, to design, to draw the square. And another interesting element is this stair. So you can see that from here to here there was a big difference of height. So and this are the images of the first Bolhao square, in a sense, Bolhao, an open market in the same place where the building today exists, more or less with the same area. And in this drawing, you can see already the opening of the streets that would make Bolhao a block, a quarter of the city. And of course the stairs that I was telling you about, so that the difference between this street and this street, it's a very significant difference. Well, the market was growing and growing, and the city hall decided to make some contests and ideas to make a covered market in order to receive all the sellers that were spread around the city. And this was problematic because of the hygiene. So the only drawings known of our market, Bolhao Central Market, is this one. But curiously or not, it's a covered version, as you can see, of the market, because as you know, initially in Porto it rains. I wouldn't say a lot, but it rains often, and as you know, in Les Halles in Paris were covered. The architect that designed the market, Correia da Silva, was a Beaux-Arts disciple and student, so he came with the French Parisian ideas here, but nevertheless, I'm sorry, finally the market wasn't covered. He was built without the covering, without the gap, because, well, the floor and the water was a complicated issue. The costs, it started to arrive news from Paris that Les Halles was giving problems. So finally they decided not to cover the market, but to cover it in a lower height. This is our old image. So the market was built between in the same place of the old square between 1914 and 1920. These are images before our intervention, so from 2015, more or less. It's a very impressive building, as you can see, very beautifully designed, because it's very difficult, as you know, to design these buildings in a slope like this. So here you have the north entrance, the high entrance, the west and the east entrances, and then the main entrance in here. And you can see here very well the Beaux-Arts style, remembering some Parisian buildings, and how he managed to design, even in the slope, it's a very well designed, that managed to cope with all this kind of bad interventions during the time that he was. So very few stores remained originally. The new subway station also was built, and inserted here some structural problems. Also, in this drawing, in this section, you can see the complexity of the floors and how he managed to design the exterior stores with the slope. And Eduardo Sotomora, the author of the metro, of the subway, left the possibility of having this entrance directly to the market in the future work. So this is very interesting for also this possibility for our work. So this, again, images from the 20s, already with the tents that have to substitute the covering. So as you can see, they would design like houses. And this is a very unique photography because it was before this covering of the galleries was built. So here's the covering, and here's the bridge that in the 40s, 50s, they had to build in order to put the live animals that were sold here. And because of the market was growing and growing and growing. Here's some images of before the intervention. Bolhao is a very unique and magical place. Every person in Porto has a connection to the market, some familiar that was going there or worked there. This is a very particular place. Here you can see how the bridge, the concrete bridge, is somehow made the market lose the feeling of the original square, because of this covering. But here you have it. And here you have also the way that the sellers found to make these streets, the selling streets, all the 5 streets, more comfortable with these improvised structures. The east and west entrances, also very Beaux-Arts style. The butchers in the gallery floor. The interior, this is where the sellers clean the tripes of the animals. Porto is known for a dish of tribes. So as you can see, there were very abandoned zones of the markets, and problematic, of course, because of hygiene issues, but also very, very interesting values that were hidden. And what's really interesting in this case study is that between the 90s and 2018, we had for this building 4 execution projects, 4 execution architectural projects and engineering projects. So we had 4 visions, 4 politic, technical visions for the markets. This was the first project that won a contest in the 90s. As you can see, the market remained open, but the architects constructed 2 floors of parking underneath the market, and also a gallery underneath the existing gallery, but also some, as you can see here in the facade, he closed and he built laterally in the void. So it was a project that augmented seriously the surface of the market. But as you can see, the entrance, it came from a higher level, so this was very strange to enter the garage from a higher level and not from a lower level. As you can see, to do this kind of structure, this would be also very problematic for the building. So it was a huge work. From somehow this wasn't built, and 10 years later, the new mayor, already in 2004, 2005, decided that Bolhao should be a commercial surface. So this is the design and the solution of Tramkron, a Dutch enterprise that, as you can see, transformed the market in a gallery mall. We thought even somehow they also wanted to do some housing inside. So this was a mix, a tutti frutti that were very badly received in town. With these are the sellers, and these are people from town that didn't agree at all with this new vision of the market. So the mayor said, okay, let's give the building to the heritage responsible entity in Portugal. That's the RCN, and this entity that supposedly manages the heritage in Portugal decided to redo the original ceiling of the Bolhao. This was in 2009 to 2011. So, and this is what would happen if this project, before our project was built. This is an existing image, and here a 3D of the covered market, supposedly because in the words of the architect that would do it from the Heritage Council, the only way that we could keep a market functioning in Porto was covering it and making several floors of parking. So this is an interesting comparison between the existing situation, all the floors of the market, and the section. The 90s contest with the garage underneath and the extra floor, the Tramkron, the Dutch proposal, the DRCN, the Heritage Council proposal, and our proposal. So I believe it's, even if you compare, the figures aren't very visible, but as you can see, the excavation, the net surface, well, it somehow doesn't it doesn't feel weird that somehow this is why this was the project built, because it's the project that uses probably the more material of the existing building, that makes the less construction And another interesting value here is the public space that he occupies, because we occupy 0 square meters in the public space, because we found with the town hall a way of doing a small tunnel to access the basement floor here, as you can see. So, and this is also an interesting data for this comparison. So our basement is purely a functional logistic basement and not a parking basement, because in the other side of the street we'll have 700 places of parking. Here we also have a mall with parking. So we felt, and the town hall felt, that we didn't need the parking, and for sure we didn't need a covering. So that's why the town hall decided not to follow the DRCN project and decided to invite us to make the project. So very quickly about the existing situation. Well, we have, of course, this is also a very interesting topic of discussion. The Bolhao Central Market it has 2 classifications, 2 protections, national protections. This means that the building is classified, but also the activity is classified, is protected. So people and their activities are, of course, also protected. So this means that, of course, the architectural project must have these 2 sides in the table. That means material and unmaterial. And this balance can result in decisions that complicated decisions in order to sacrifice values of materiality and in favor of unmateriality. I will explain it later on. These are images from the facades. For instance, you can see here somehow how the facades were decharacterized, changed the confusion around it, and how somehow only some original, like in this one or in this one and this one, very few original stores remain with the original screens. Of course, elements that we found very interesting to remade and put in place because they were totally lost. Only 1 or 2 stores kept this kind of elements. Well, the confusion around publicity in somehow not interesting, but somehow interesting examples. Well, the infrastructure, as you can see, a chaos. The rain infrastructure also chaotic from the beginning of the building, with not a clear strategy, and as you can imagine, a lot of problems, not only in the exterior but also, as you can see here, in the interior. The windows, either the wood windows, either the iron windows, only few windows were original. This was also very important, the study of the remaining ones in order to have a strategy of global rehabilitation. And of course, some the necessity and the improvisation of some of the sellers like these tents in order to protect the vegetables, or these are the selling points. These were very, very interesting materials to analyze and inform the future project, as you can see here. Are the shades that the sellers were using directly from their beds to the market. So, and of course, as I told you before, the way that they protected the streets, you can see it inside, in order not to have the rain. They used the pavilions mainly as storage, and they came outside to the streets to sell. So somehow the original structures of selling weren't functional and were giving many problems, and a filter, a dense filter, and they preferred to have this clarity, this transparency between the buyer and the seller, as you can see here. You know? So, and this, of course, these are not interesting examples of how they use the original pavilions. Well, the water that was needed to take to another places, structural problems, as you can see here and here. And the three topics that the project tried to solve, of course, the character and the values of the building, the character and the values of the market itself, the activity, and the connection and the relationship with the city. These are the three main themes to articulate, re-articulate the relationship with the city, more transparent, accessible, articulated, comfortable, communicating, hygienic, functional, to restore and redignify the physical aspect of the building, the identity, the coherence, remove the bad interventions along the time, etc. And of course, make an upgrade, an aggiornamento of the fresh market, of the municipality market, because as you know, today, having the central market, it's a very complex and exigent challenge. So these are some drawings of how we try to recover the lost identity of the image of the market outside, recovering the original window shops, and redesigning it accordingly as close as possible as the original drawing, but improving, of course, every time we could the performance of the windows. These are some 3Ds from 2015 that were made to present the work. And there's also another project inside the project that are the stores, the 60 stores that exist towards the exterior. Each one, it has its own project, but we had to organize the floors and the news accessibility and the infrastructure in order to make a clear gestion or management of what was happening. So here you can see the complexity of the alleys, of the volumes that were in the outside. Here the plan, as you can see, a very, very complex plan with many variations from shop to shop. The owners will do their own project, but anyhow, we had to give them some guidelines in order not to destroy what we were trying to organize globally. These are the global plans. So green, you can see this is the upper floor. So in green, you can see coffees and restaurants using the former gallery where the butchers were. And here you can see the new fresh gallery open to local producers, seasonal food, street food, etc. This is a very open program gallery that will be managed by the administration of the central of the market. Then if we go down to the what we call the terrado, that means the square itself where the market happens, it's here. So you've seen the plans here upstairs where the butchers were. Here you can see the tents that we are recovering also in order to protect from the sun, because we'll have tables outside that belong to the restaurants. So in here downstairs you can see the new market, let's call it like this. These are the windows from the restaurants upstairs, and so downstairs we'll have the market itself with the 5 streets that you can see here. They were slightly redimensioned in order to make them more functional. The butchers here, the fish selling stores here, and of course toilets and other infrastructures, and this is where the market will happen. Again, you can see nowadays any market needs a logistic basement or surface, very net functional. So we decided to make it only logistic, because the parking, as I told you, it will be outside. That problem was solved. So we excavated the central part of the square in order not to touch the building itself. And we redesigned, as you can see here, the original, the former, we reinterpreted in and somehow analogy of the existing solution. So this is the basement, the central basement, and the 4 connections with the existing vertical circulation and the tunnel that I was telling you, that allowed us not to occupy public space with the access to the tunnel. So here the trucks can enter in order to supply the market. Here are the 2 tons elevators, the ice zone, because you always need a lot of ice in a market. The boxes for the sellers, they all need some back office, some arrangement, to make their own stuff. The function for the toilets and the showers, etc., for the guys that work in the market. The reservoirs of water, also the zone of garbage, the garbage zone. So also the trucks of garbage need to come here and to take the garbage out. So of course, for instance, the meat comes from outside, it will be delivered here and then goes up within this functional area. And of course, another infrastructural area. So here's the tunnel that allowed us not to occupy any public space. So this is, everything happens under the floor. And these are some sketches from the main theme of the market itself, the selling, the 5 streets, the selling points. We always saw them as an analogy of somehow was existing already in the market. See, and this was the idea, you know, inspired by traditional washing structures around Porto. So here's a construction plan. You see here the basement and the new structures and the relationship, the butcher here, partially integrated, partially exterior, but leaving the pillars free to be read. Some studies in order to find the correct form of this new covering, but of course in a lower plan, very, very close to what existed. So we are not inventing anything. The solution was already there. As you can see, we can have the best of two worlds, you know, the exterior and the interior. Some studies also of how these equipment elements could work and could transform themselves in somehow the amphitheatrum that the sellers need, to as in these images of traditional markets that work really well, you know, that this tension, this between the selling and the seller, and the seller and the buyer, this closeness and this so, and these are some 3D of the existing situation and the future situation. Even if these 3D already have 5-6 years, they can give you an idea of what will happen. So we somehow have this romantic idea that a market works only with a tent or with a small structure, but this is a plan of the infrastructures that we needed to coordinate inside the new market. Well, it's a highly and very complex challenge to manage all these structural networks, ventilations, water, etc., etc., etc. So you can see it here. This is already an on-site image of how, well, making a market today is really a complex challenge. Many infrastructures to manage, and of course this is an original image where you can see this 80s layer of covering that imitated the ardoise. I don't know the name in English, but you know, the ardoise toiles, typically French, but used all around Europe. This is an imitation coat made in the 80s, but we managed to recover and to remade the ceiling in ardoise itself. This has a very beautiful light and reflection, of course, completely different from the old. And we needed also to study. These are from our engineers to study in the tunnel of in a ventilation tunnel, the effect of the wind inside the market. We arrived to the conclusion that this wasn't worrying, the effect of the wind inside the insulation studies. And because we needed also to control the temperatures underneath the new covering, and we arrived also to a very pleasant conclusion that with some punctual exceptions, we are always in the comfort area using this covering. So these are images from the site. The new bridge that won't be covered in order to see totally the original square limits. These are essays to prototypes for the street and for the selling point. These are again the design of this in more detailed shape of these selling points. The subway entrance here in the corner, this will be very interesting, very important here. This is an old photograph. This is a 3D. The new passage, more or less in the same point. Here, the design of the bridge and some final images of the passage without a covering that allows us to have, this is also 3D image, allow us to have this this view of the original skyline, Beaux-Arts skyline, and not interrupted by the bridge. So the bridge is only here and here, and here you have the movement of the streets that were always there. So we feel that we kept very close to the original intention. So some last images of the ongoing sequence of the site. This is underneath the streets. We will use these spaces as boxes for the sellers also. You can see also the transparency that the market will gain with this operation, with this cleanness, you know, that somehow was lost because of the type of glass and the occupation. The effort that is being done in order to keep even slabs of concrete from the 20s. So this is only to keep them in the site. The traditional wood covering behind the ardoise. Foundings that we didn't imagine that were there, publicity hidden beneath the coat, the terrible coat of painting that they made also in the 80s. The sculptures that are also being restored. The original color behind the terrible color that was made. The basement, the excavation. The service areas, the bridges, and the sellers waiting to come back. So that's it. Thank you. I can.
Thank you very much, Nuno. Thank you. So let's try to ask our students and guests if they have any questions. Ребята, у вас есть какие-то вопросы? Я бы очень был рад, если, может быть, кто-то из кураторов смог задать пару вопросов. Даня Веретенников. Кто-то из участников. Ребята, не стесняйтесь, пожалуйста. You know, our students are quite shy. I don't know why, but they, I don't know. Yesterday also during the lecture, Christina Palini, and no one asked a question, and it was not because it was not interesting. It was just because she blew up our minds and brains, and it was so so inspiring, exactly as your lecture. So guys, please keep on asking questions. Otherwise, I will start my question.
Yeah.
I also can check what's going on YouTube, because as far as I remember, we have a chat always there. Because it was not interesting. Yeah, but anyway, so let me then stick probably to my question. So probably my colleague in Bosborough also would like to ask something. What I wanted to ask you, you were saying about this double protection, material and immaterial. Could you please specify a little bit on this topic, maybe a little bit more descriptive?
I'm sorry, I don't know. Am I still sharing the screen or not?
Now, yes.
Yes. I can. I'm sorry. I'm searching for a way to stop sharing the screen.
That's okay.
I don't understand why I can't stop share the screen. Can you help me, Gregory, or not? No. Interrupt my sharing, or